Hello there and welcome to this special DPP podcast in partnership with the Avid Community Association. Delighted to have you with us. My name is Mark Harrison. I'm the CEO of the DPP.
And I'm Nick Kemp, and I'm the DPP's Production Innovation Associate.
Nick, we're pretty excited, aren't we, to have the chance to talk about audio for 90 minutes because, you know, it's a kind of truism that you can get away with dodgy video, but you can't get away with dodgy sound. So we all know, and we've all known for a long time how important audio is, but nonetheless, it's felt like for the last few years, all the focus has been upon, UHD pictures and HDR pictures, and that high quality audio has just been regarded as something for the enthusiast. But maybe in the last couple of years, that's suddenly changed.
Absolutely, yeah. When HDR first arrived, it was incredible. It was mind-blowing seeing HDR for the first time on a really good monitor or a screen. And immersive audio is the same. When you first hear it on headphones or in a studio, it's absolutely incredible, and it makes sense. And I think it's really difficult to go backwards from that once you've heard it.
Yeah, but of course, those who have been producing sound for the cinema have been working in this kind of quality for years. But in your experience, because you work with a lot of different types of production entity around their workflows, do you think the rest of the industry is managing to keep up with what's happening in sound?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, I think with drama, and particularly cinematic drama and gaming, it's been around for a long time. But absolutely in TV and social as well, it is relatively new. And I think that still has challenges in the workflow and in production as well. However, I do think that very, very shortly, everyone will be listening to immersive audio on their headphones or in their home cinemas. I think it will become really accessible soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's just what we want to talk about today, to define what we mean by immersive audio and what it means to be working this way. We've got 7 fantastic people to help us to do that. I'm actually going to whisk Nick away for a few minutes. She'll be back shortly to ask questions of some of those guests of ours. But I just want to spend a moment just setting a little bit of consumer context and market context, because it does feel to me as if as screens have got smaller, audio has got bigger. And what I mean by that is first of all, that it feels as if the cinema has finally shrunk into the living room. And partly that's because the pandemic led to lots of cinemas literally being shut, but also because of the high quality of displays that people now have and the extraordinary volume of high-end content that people have to view. But as people begin at home, to consume content on 55-inch or 65-inch UHD, HDR displays, inevitably they've begun to think more about the quality of the sound as well. And I've been really struck at the Consumer Electronics Show over the last couple of years at how much emphasis has been put upon audio, and particularly how Dolby Atmos, for instance, has just become a synonym now for high quality audio on your display. But while the cinema has shrunk into the living room, at the same time, it seems as if TV has kind of shrunk into the smartphone, with more and more people consuming kind of everyday content on mobile devices. But when they do that, how do they hear the sound? Well, almost invariably, they're hearing it on headphones. And those headphones themselves are becoming higher and higher quality. There's a huge amount of interest in high-end headphones. And this has been really remarkable because, in fact, in the space of just 2 years, the value of the consumer headphone market has doubled. It's doubled to $45 billion a year. Now, that's a big number, but you're probably thinking, I can't really set that in context. Well, consider for a moment all the hype we're getting around the metaverse. The total value of that kind of immersive technology is put at about 6.5 billion currently. So 6.5 billion for immersive tech to create kind of metaverse type experiences, 45 billion just on headphones. And we're now seeing, Dolby Atmos capable smartphones from all the major smartphone manufacturers, soundbars, again, from all the kind of top names. But it's very interesting that that Sky, in releasing their Sky Glass product, have got Atmos built in. And even car manufacturers, such as Mercedes-Benz, are now announcing immersive audio in the form of Dolby Atmos for in-car audio. So it's truly incredible, this kind of drive in the consumer realm for really, really high-end sound. So what's that beginning to mean for us? Well, to get us into the conversation, let's just explore these market dynamics a little bit further with our first two guests. So I'm going to bring in, first of all, Tina Ekman, who is Director of Content Relations at Dolby, and also Ashley Ross, who is the Principal Technical Specialist at Sky. So there's Tina, and here comes Ashley. Welcome, Tina. Hi there, Ashley. Great to have you both with us. Thank you for being here. So Tina, first of all, I've described just some of the manifestations of how, in particular, Dolby Atmos is now appearing in the market. But tell me how it's feeling for you, not just only around Atmos, but sort of generally as you look around the kind of market for high-end audio at the moment.
Absolutely, yes. But first, I do want to comment, just because I was enjoying your consumer conversation there, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank some of our amazing partners we've had. I know in the UK, I'm from the US, so from the UK, we've been really fortunate to have an incredible uptake of Dolby Atmos, and it's been through partners like Sky and BT Sports. In the US, obviously, I work with people like Netflix, Disney, Apple TV, and they have created literally thousands and thousands of hours of content in Dolby, and we're super excited to be working with them. But regarding more of a studio support creator standpoint, which you were asking about, we've been creating audio and visuals actually now for over 56 years, which is incredible to me. And
Yeah.
I think our big goal is to give people the opportunity to make their visions or their sounds accurate. And so it's been really exciting to see the support from the studios. Mark, I loved when you said that, the screens are getting smaller, but the audio is getting bigger. I totally agree. The cool thing about Dolby Atmos, and I think why people are moving towards it, is because it really gives the creative the ability to really be free from the speakers in that immersive environment, so they can create something that's really either quite bombastic, which we all love, of course, but also some of the quieter scenes are just incredible and really make you feel immersed in the environment. And I think that's why it's been so successful. But our studio partners have been very supportive, as I said. And these days, most of the studio people are expecting shows to be delivered in Dolby Atmos. That includes things like unscripted animations, kids programming. It's just super exciting to see what's happening. And even from a global standpoint with things like Squid Game, for example, we're seeing a lot of content also being created in dubs, international dubs with Dolby Atmos. So
Right.
It's just a really exciting time.
Actually, that's a good segue, Tina, to bring in Ashley. So actually, from Sky's point of view, how long ago did you start to make high quality audio, part of your kind of expectation around content?
High quality audio, I would say, has always been part of what we do at Sky. For Atmos, it was 2017 summer. That's when we launched. We had it available for our sports content, movies, and for us, it's a format we back, we believe in. It's our starting point when we commission content. It's not a case of should it be Atmos, is there a reason why we can't? So our starting point with all Sky originals is let's do this in Atmos.
Right. So that's the starting point. I mean, that's extraordinary. And and why Atmos in particular? Why have you leapt to that?
Just because it gives viewers an experience unlike before. I don't want to keep using the word immersive, but it's very appropriate. It engulfs people in a way that just the 2D surround sound just couldn't. And where we have soundbar adoption taking up really high, a lot of those are getting Atmos. And as you commented on, we've launched Glass. It has built-in Dolby Atmos. That shows you how much we believe in that immersive experience.
And I'm intrigued to know, actually, from both of you, perhaps we go back to you, Tina, first, to what extent it feels to you like this is a push, and to what extent it's a pull? So to what extent is it because so much great content is being made with immersive sound, and how much is it that consumers are now actually wanting it?
So funny you say that, because push and pull has been a conversation we've been talking about a lot at Dolby. From our standpoint, it's from the creatives actually pushing it to the studios. That was really the first big push. And we've actually seen quite a bit of that. It was, I don't know, a year ago or so, where we first heard that a studio said they had to make sure Dolby Atmos was enabled because it was in a contract from the creators saying that they were only going to give them their show, and it's a substantial show, if they did it in Dolby, both Vision and Atmos for that matter. So that was a really huge turning point for all of us at Dolby, and super exciting. And that just shows us that, when services have launched in the past, and I won't say which ones, but there have been a couple that have launched without Dolby, and there was quite a backlash from the consumers. So we're so grateful that people are enjoying what we've done, and super happy to see that there is a lot of push happening actually by both creatives and consumers asking for it. So it's been fun.
Ashley, how does it feel to you?
Yeah, I'd say it's an equal balance. We have our creators we partner with, they're keen to adopt it. And it's certainly something that our viewers are vocal about on forums. If a title that someone would expect to have it hasn't, they let us know.
Is that right?
So it's certainly something, certainly something that the viewers want as well.
That's extraordinary. And do you have any sense, Ashley, to what extent your consumers are actually consuming with headphones rather than with speakers?
I think most people are using sound bars. We unfortunately at this stage don't offer it on our OTT services. Right. That is only going to be 5.1 and down mixed to stereo. It's something we are exploring, but at the moment it's only in the home environment are we offering Atmos.
Right. Not yet getting you're not getting people complaining yet that when they are watching Sky Go, your mobile platform, that they haven't got Atmos. That's not happening yet.
That's not come to me, not to say that there hasn't been some comments.
because surely what's going on in the music and gaming environments is also a huge driver here, and I guess that's nowadays mostly consumed through headphones. Tina, would you say?
Yeah, it's actually really exciting. We've had some really big announcements lately with Apple and their spatial music. For example, gaming has been always exciting as well. And that's, of course, headphones. Where, with your earlier comment, as far as like Mercedes and Lucid, and obviously automotive is coming, and things like podcasting as well. So we're definitely expanding and continually looking for ways that we can help with audio.
Yeah, and maybe even out of home content, and I guess
Lots of there's
resorts and
millions of devices, I think, every month are being shipped, literally. I think we're anticipating 1 billion devices in consumers' hands this year. So it's pretty incredible, the volume. And, there are quite a few studios that have responded in kind to be able to support that.
Wow. Okay, that's phenomenal. Definitely time for us to start to define our terms a little bit around this topic, I think, and start to talk about what it means to work with it. So I'm going to bring back Nick. I'm also going to bring in 3 further guests. We're very pleased to have Chris Aragon, who's the Managing Director of 5A Studios. We have Jonathan Wales, who's re-recording mixer at Warner Brothers Studios, and also Andrea Borgato, who's the senior manager for TV, music, and sport partnerships at Dolby. So our second Dolby guest. So welcome to all of you. Hi there, Chris. Hi,
Thank
Andrea.
you.
I'm sure we'll have Jonathan in with us very soon. I can see that he's unmuted. We just need to get his picture up. And Ray actually will be, maybe an error. We'll bring Ray in a little bit later. We just need to get Jonathan in first of all. But while we wait for Jonathan, let me hand over to you, Nick.
Yep, so what I'd really like to do, before we go into full discussion about all different types of audio, is to unpack it a little bit, to define the various terms that we have floating around. So first of all, immersive audio, we talked about this before, that immersive audio really is the umbrella term for like 360 experience around a listener, and has actually gracefully put it, engulfing them in an immersive experience. But then we have a bunch of terms and trademarks such as, we've got spatial audio, we've got Apple spatial audio, we've got Dolby Atmos, which we've talked a lot about, binaural audio, 3D audio. Jonathan, I'd really like to ask you first. We've talked about this being, you've got authoring formats and output formats. Can you explain a little bit about which ones are the authoring ones and which ones are the output ones, and those in between as well?
Yeah, it is very confusing, I think, even for us to exactly navigate. Immersive in general, obviously, is sort of the umbrella term for anything that puts you into that sort of 3D audio space where you can feel things coming from around you, above you, behind you. And, that can exist in a room with speakers, or it can exist being pumped into your head directly with headphones. Dolby Atmos is obviously the most well-known and the most obvious format that allows for this. And Dolby Atmos itself is the innovation that's so great is that it's an object-based audio format. So it not only allows us to send audio to notional points in space where speakers would be, but it also allows us to literally take points of audio with metadata and make it feel like it's coming from the middle of your head or wherever we want to. And as a format, that allows us to mix in one environment and then move the playback to a completely different environment and have a very, very similar and predictable result. So I can mix in my studio here at home in Dolby Atmos, and I can go and play it back in an enormous room at Warner Brothers, or I can put on a pair of headphones and listen to it in binaural and get a predictably similar result. And I think that's really what we're going for. If you get a sound bar, you can fake effectively the idea that there are lots of speakers in your room. And a lot of the reason it's able to do that is because baked into the Dolby Atmos delivery that we as creators are making is all the information necessary for the playback device to recreate that three-dimensional sound in the environment in which it's in. And that's the big departure. Previously, in 5.1 or whatever, we're simply giving you channels of audio, left, center, right, and behind you, and whatever. Now you're giving the computer instructions that allows it to recreate the same audio experience in a different environment.
Great, thank you. That's really, really helpful. So yeah, it's going from the horizontal listening experience to you're adding in the vertical as well, and suddenly you've got it as an immersive experience. You talk about binaural being headphone only speakers. Is that the case, and is that produced in a different way?
Well, binaural itself is obviously literally derived from two ears. As a format, it is simply a method of delivering audio directly into your ears that accounts for how you as a human being hear sound. So notionally, you're modeling the head, the ears, and recreating how we as human beings hear sound in the real world, but then piping that sound directly into the ear so that you perceive it the same way that you would if you weren't wearing headphones.
Right, amazing. Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Chris, you've had a lot of experience with binaural sound, haven't you, as well?
Well, reasonable, I suppose. We have done a number of adverts and a feature film as well in binaural. So yes, I mean, it's a very old technique. It's a very old recording technique. What happens is that it just tricks your brain into believing that actually you're perceiving a depth and positioning. So then you, because of the headphones, that's how you don't contaminate one ear with the other, with the sound from the other. So then that's why it's very effective. And yes, I mean, it is one technique that is available. We used it because that was what the creatives wanted, but of course, you have way more control over the immersiveness in Dolby Atmos, which was something that we also have at 5A. So, but yeah, like you were saying, there are different techniques, and there are different techniques that they can be applied to whatever the creatives want. Because I think something that is amazing now is that people are actually understanding audio. Because what I found before, I mean, I think audio is something very difficult to sell to creatives, to sell to directors, to make them, I mean, some of them obviously, they are very much attuned to what you can do in terms of audio, but it is difficult for people to understand exactly how is it going to happen around you, how that is going to enhance that particular piece of whatever it is, of content. So I think, with all these techniques available and people understanding more and being more aware of it, makes our lives a little bit easier as well in the recording studio, to bring all this to life, and for them to allow us the time, the budget to use these tools to bring those visions to life. So that they incorporate this as well within their workflows. It's not just, oh, well, sound, post, in terms of what we do long form and short form sound post. It's not that we come at the end and then, we're locked, off you go.
Yeah.
You do your thing. Now is there is a dialogue beforehand. It's like, well, how can we incorporate all this into our brief, and it has become so much more, it's so much easier to work with all the creatives. That's what I feel. At least that's what I have experienced here in 5A.
Sorry, Nick, can I just for one clarification, something I'm a bit stuck on is binaural, can binaural only be consumed with headphones?
Yes, because that's how the brain get.
Right.
Sorry.
So what's the kind of relationship between it and other immersive formats? Because that sounds fine for music, but impossibly limiting for anything that's tied to video.
You'd be surprised.
well, yes. I mean, binaural it can be only consumed with headphones, because you perceive that depth and that spatial positioning, because the two signals, the left and right, are separate from each other. So the ones you mix them in a room, then the directionality gets lost. That's why Dolby Atmos is so so much better at it within a space and with speakers, because then that is not a problem anymore. It's not something that will stop you anymore. So that is the difference. So and binaural can be created as well. I don't know if we said this before, but then you can record in binaural, and then you can also do it afterwards in post. So, but yes, you do need to consume it in headphones. So really the best way would be doing Dolby Atmos and then just fold it into binaural, so then you can listen to that mix into your headphones.
And in the big scheme of things, what gets really interesting with binaural is basically a delivery medium, right? You can go to a cinema and you can watch a Dolby Atmos movie, or you can watch that same movie on your headphones in binaural. Right. And so what's happening is you're getting the closest version of the same thing, of the same experience, delivered directly into your head. One thing that really occurs to me, by the way, picking up on what you guys were talking about earlier, is in the 80s and 90s we had CDs, right? And then we graduated, if you like, from CDs to iPod, which massively increased choice but massively decreased quality for quite a long time. And now it's now nice to see, because now high quality, both in vision and audio, is now becoming the driver of increased adoption. So you have people like Netflix and stuff, and they are selling and actively pushing an increase in quality as being the best way forward. And I think that's one of the most encouraging things that we're seeing in general. And it's really obviously lovely for creative people like us to get to work in these formats.
Yeah, great. I mean, it truly is very exciting. And in terms of the different genres, do you see obviously in drama, Dolby Atmos probably is the biggest one, or IMAX for the immersive sound. But in terms of like TV, social, sports, do you see different types of these formats being used, or is it do you choose to use different formats for different types of things?
Well, I must.
Yeah, so go, Andrea. Yeah, Andrea, go.
Yeah. I was going to just jump in, actually, as you mentioned, sports and other applications. One comment actually on something you mentioned earlier about gaming, and you mentioned as being quite an obvious choice for immersive, and immersive has been deployed, and specifically binaural in gaming for a long time, which of course is an integral part of the experience. And you need to be able to interact with the game and with the scenario that you're in and immersed in, to be able to respond to the game, right? So if somebody's attacking you from behind or from whatever other direction, you need to have a very accurate spatial cue, and that's why it's so instrumental to the storytelling. And in general, you can say that audio is clearly a very important tool for the narrative, for the director to tell a story, and immersive is enlarging and enriching that palette of opportunities. And completely agree with what also Chris was saying earlier about the creatives. And I suppose our experience is that people that have been already using it are really enjoying and making the most of the opportunity, and some people are still trying to figure out what to do with it. Sports has been sports in general drives a lot of innovation in broadcast technology because of the high property value and the rights, the TV sports rights, and so historically a lot of innovation, and the majority of innovation in TV has been driven by big sports events. If we go back to, for example, the World Cup in Brazil in 2014, that's where the early tests were carried out by FIFA, for example, with immersive audio, to the point of actually delivering every single match from Russia, the FIFA World Cup in UHD, HDR, and immersive audio to all their international UHD right holder broadcasters. Here in UK, we've been actually very fortunate, as Tina also mentioned and Ashley mentioned earlier, that we had some amazing service providers and broadcasters who have been actually pushing this and particularly believing in audio as a way to drive customer engagement and immersive audio in specifically both BT and Sky. They launched the English Premier League in immersive audio with delivery in Dolby Atmos since 2018. Or summer 2017, as Ashley mentioned, which was the beginning of that season. So yes, it is something that is really picking up, and you will see more and more services making the most of this. And that's why now, for example, the likes of Champions League, UEFA Champions League is starting from this current season. Every single match from the round of 16 turn, which is starting from February, will deliver every single match in HD, HDR with immersive audio, and they will do that from the quarterfinals for the Europa League and so on and so forth. And there are a bunch of other sports properties that are currently testing and going through the preparation of what eventually will turn out to be a delivery in immersive audio.
Great, fascinating, thank you. And in terms of the sports, a lot more people are watching sports on mobile phones now. And does that then also translate to the mobile usage?
So yes, I think there is one thing to consider, that you can derive a binauralized experience from, like, for example, an Atmos delivery, an immersive audio delivery. But of course, there are different approaches and ways of doing that. There are tools, without being too technical, that enable you to derive out of a main mix and generate certain what we call binaural metadata, which are attributes of that particular deliverable, so that it will optimize the way it is mapping over headphone to give you that binauralized experience that Jonathan and Chris were talking about earlier. So that is there are basic ways of deriving that binauralized experience, and let's say this more integrated way of doing so is becoming more and more of a feature. If I think in music terms, we have the fortune of working with a variety of the digital service providers for Atmos Music, the likes of Apple, Amazon, Tidal, and others. And if I take, for example, the way both Tidal and Amazon delivery, the binauralized experience for those users that are actually using headphone-based immersive audio experience playback, they will actually use this way of delivering the mix with this binaural metadata, so that it gets optimized for those users over headphone listening.
Great. And do you think, the question to all of you really, how do you feel about the use of 5.1 stereo and 7.1? Does that still have a place now? Creatively?
Yeah, of course.
I would say so. I'd say mono, a high quality mono still has a place if that's what the creative wants. I think I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I think for me, it's what the creative intends. What's their vision? What's their intention? Whether that be 5.1 immersive audio, stereo.
And also you can make a binaural from a 7.1 or a 5.1. And it'll give you the same amount of, it does the best it can to give you the same experience that you would in 7.1 or 5.1.
I'd just also add, anyone who's struggling to understand the concept of how could two headphones produce such an effective immersive mix. If you're in a room with 5.1 or a cinema with 10 speakers or one with 100 speakers, it's still going into two ears. And what binaural does is just recreate what's going in your ears. And if you jump on YouTube after this call, type in binaural, there's some really effective examples of people walking through streets, doing some really high quality recordings. And you will find at some point you might suddenly look right or left, thinking that you've something in your room's just gone past.
So one thing that intrigues me about all this is that, does this sort of fundamentally change the relationship between the sound engineer and the picture editor? Because are you now working in very different mediums, and does it make it harder to kind of to understand each other?
No, it makes it easier. Because we're telling stories is ultimately what we're doing, and at least in produced content like what I'm mostly working on, and this gives us more ability to put an audience into the mood or into the feeling of what we want them to experience. And immersive is it's very obvious when you have like spaceships flying around and stuff like that, but it's incredibly good at doing things that are subtle, of just like being a person alone in a forest and hearing a bird over there. That level of realism can really, it's terrible because you just immediately want to say immerse, but it brings the audience deeper into the story, and that I think is one of the reasons that directors, picture editors, producers love it so much, because you can really get that feeling, And then when it comes to other formats, by the way, when can I watch the Super Bowl in Atmos?
That's wild, but Chris, surely if you're handing off to a picture editor, they probably won't be listening in the same format as you are working in, will they?
I think no, but I think what opens up is a dialogue beforehand. What we had with this film that we did in binaural, it was it was more with the DOP. So then the way that we were trying to do all the shots, it was to allow sound to be placed behind the listener. So it was A Christmas Carol. So all the ghosts, etc. So then it was with Simon Callow. So the way that he was being filmed, it was different than what they were doing it in the first place. So then this production was thought before, but it was not going to be in immersive audio. Was not going to be in binaural. So they had it all rehearsed in a very much like you would in the theater. So then everything was happening in front of the audience. So very little was happening behind. So it was a complete dialogue to understand that now, well, things can happen and should happen behind us, because that's what we wanted to have, that immersive experience. So then Simon is in front of us, telling us the story, and then suddenly he just points, over there, and then suddenly something is happening there, and then you think, oh, okay, there's the ghost. So that was the whole idea, to bring that, to have that. We have the attention on Simon, but also Simon was seeing in front of him unfold everything, or rather listening everything unfold that he was telling us about A Christmas Carol. And with that came some challenges, from the director, from Simon, and from the DOP, because they were really, at some point there was confusion as to how something was going to work. Some things work really well, some things didn't work incredibly well, but it was a very good dialogue that was opened up from the beginning. So being there from the beginning, being in location, discussing different shots, different ways that we were going to do different parts of the story, I think that was a very important and very rich experience that hopefully we all going to carry on with all the production moving forward. So then the way that we are also giving us, the visual material will allow us and enable us to be more creative and to paint more of the picture. So I think that's what I'm hoping, that it will just move forward more and more, being this kind of dialogue, with the creatives and the sound, both the picture team and the sound team, from very early on in the production.
Let's maybe bring in our final two guests so that we've got everybody here to start to talk about some of the production detail of this. And so I'm really pleased to have Thomas Fikowski, who is the Director of Technology and Engineering at Twickenham Film Studios. And also, we saw him briefly earlier on, but Ray Thompson from Avid. Hi there, Ray. Great to have you in properly into the conversation.
It's good to be back, Nick and Mark. Thank you.
And I've seen that a couple of you have begun to ask questions in the Q&A. Well done. It's something I didn't mention earlier on. Please do. Feel free to put questions into the Q&A. We're seeing them come in, beginning to clock them, so we'll start to bring those into the conversation very soon. But first of all, just Thomas and Ray, I'm really keen to begin to look at the kinds of tools that one needs and the kind of environment that one needs in order to work this way. So Ray, perhaps I could begin with you. Does working with immersive audio mean a completely different and more expensive tool set?
It can certainly mean, the need for obviously all of the equipment required to do Dolby Atmos for sure. But there are things and tool sets that allow you to work with it even offline, right? So do you need the entire rig to do things like some of the mixing afterwards? No, you don't. But if you've been to any of the Avid trade shows, certainly one of the features we always have is the full Dolby Atmos rig, and make it available to folks to see, and it's an amazing experience. But what we're trying to do is provide the tool sets that meet a lot of the demands that Jonathan was speaking to, same as Ashley as well, right? To provide the tool sets to allow folks to deliver the experience that the content itself demands, right? And so whether that is television, episodics, or film and TV projects, or certainly any type of other entertainment, whether it be something like gaming, certainly augmented reality, virtual reality, right? All of it is being leveraged in Pro Tools And the other cool thing about Avid and Pro Tools is the music aspect, right? And so I think a lot of the comments that people have made around the adoption in the industry, around Apple, Amazon, and all these other different tool sets that people now have access to very easily and very inexpensively to put in their own homes, it certainly adds to the experience. So that has been a big driver for us in terms of not only our partnership with Dolby, but delivering the tool sets and constantly moving forward in the technologies to deliver those experiences to help creatives tell the story that they want to tell.
Well, we're talking of Atmos, for instance, being kind of everywhere and in so many different devices. But is it possible to kind of, if you like, produce kind of Atmos light? Can a low budget production actually meaningfully work with this kind of sound?
I think it's budget. I think it definitely depends on the budget, right? I think there are. I think it was Ashley or maybe Jonathan mentioned that. The first sort of starting point nowadays is Dolby Atmos. Why wouldn't we do it, right? And you wouldn't do it maybe potentially because of the budget in some scenarios. But for the most part, I think the starting point is, we're going to do this in Dolby Atmos. Why wouldn't we, right? And that could be a creative reason, as Chris was mentioning, or it could be something budgetary.
Right. And Thomas, when it comes to a similar kind of theme, when it comes to the working environment, to the space that you are going to be working in if you're a sound engineer, have you got to have a custom designed, certified, and expensive space to work with Atmos?
Of course, of course. This is why actually I'm sitting in the room, one of the rooms in here. So this room is a full Atmos. It's got a S6 Avid on the console and DFC integration as well. Also in this room, if we're talking about Pro Tools rigs, we got 8 to 9 Pro Tools rigs assigned to the room. So because when the mix is happening, so we got the 2 mixers behind me. So then we got 2 different mixers for sound and music and effects and dialogue. Then we get another mixer in there. So the room need to function properly. So to build the room like that, it's with proper acoustic, it's around 1 mil. So that's one is, and this money need to be returned. So the mix, the film mix is taking around 5 weeks. Editorial before is already pre-prepared, but the whole mix, it's a 5 weeks. So it's a pre-mix, the changes, and then final mix on the one week. So it's compared to the picture, it's much longer period of the post-production. I mean, I don't think about VFX for the picture, etc. I just saying about grading. So definitely environment is very important, and everything need to work because in the room is a very big pressure. So the whole thing is to build the console as custom as we can. As we were talking about creatives before, creatives just want to hear on the control environment what they hear in here, and then how it's translated on the other media. So Atmos, the first Atmos film was done in 2012, so it was Brave. And from now on, it's become the standard. So the immersive mixing has become the standard. For instance, in Twickenham Film Studios, we're doing the mixing for Atmos mix for 11 years. So it's nothing new. So even if we don't do, if we do the 5.1 or 7.1, we always mix. On the beginning, we mix with the Atmos, prepare everything for the Atmos, and then fall down, even if there is no requirements from the client, because it's much better way how everything fall down to the different formats.
So just as we're talking increasingly in the industry about sort of lighter weight production, virtualized production out of the cloud, being able to produce at home, does this actually mean that in the world of audio post-production that we're being pushed backwards into a world of very expensive, big purpose-built spaces that you have to work in? Jonathan?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think like there's always been a distinction between what you're doing for a big theatrical movie that's then going to be played back in a large space versus what's necessary if you're doing, for instance, broadcast on a streaming service. Likewise, the Atmos requirement is slightly different, especially in terms of the monitoring. You don't need to be in an enormous room in order to do stuff that's going on a streaming service. In fact, it's actually probably wrong, because there's a lot less in common between the room that Thomas is in right now and watching something on Netflix. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing so much of the Netflix content here in my studio. I think the big difference, though, is like back in 2012 and 2013, 14, making Atmos was really technically difficult. You know, and what's happened in the last sort of, wow, almost decade, is that the tools for working in Atmos have really caught up and become very fluid. So working in Atmos now in Pro Tools is just as easy as working in 5.1 or 7.1. And I think that's really what makes the difference. So I don't think that there's this requirement. I also think there's a difference between video product like films and post-production in movies, which is a different process than working in music. I think if I wanted to do a music mix, there's no reason I couldn't put on a pair of headphones and do a music mix binaurally in Atmos in one system right now.
Yeah, it's even better on the headphones. I would agree.
And actually,
that's what people are going to listen to.
Sure. And I was going to say, actually, just to add to what you guys just said, it is true, and that's actually a lot of music mixing is actually starting on a headphone. And back to the point that was made earlier also by Ray, you don't have to be in the studio all the time. And in fact, a lot of the prep work for a lot of music mixing, for example, happens on a laptop or a similar system, let's say. But then it is always advisable when it gets finalized before you actually finish and print that mix to go into a room, into a proper mix room, which may need to satisfy certain requirements to get that comfort that is going to sound well and translate well between a speaker-based, loudspeaker-based system against the headphone experience. And that's exactly what's happening in music. And in fact, on one side, you know, things have been accelerating a lot, in particular since the launch of Atmos services over Apple Music on their spatial audio offering, which was launched in June this year. And things have been accelerating very fast in the music space, as you can imagine. We started, for example, in the UK with, you know, just a few studios, and now we're approaching something like 60, 70 studios equipped to do music, specifically for music. But a lot of these studios are actually private studios or project studios, like owned by the producer or the mixer. So some of them actually quite small, home-based studios, along the lines also what Jonathan was describing earlier. And as long as you have the capability of checking and you can trust the room and checking between a loudspeaker-based system and the translation to the binauralized version, that's basically what you're looking for. And the other thing I was going to add is actually sports, just to complete what I was saying earlier. In the majority of cases nowadays, especially on those big events I was referring to earlier, you actually do a live, that's obviously live mixing, typically done in an outside broadcast vehicle. So there are now quite a few of these outside broadcast vehicles, which are equipped, despite the space constraints that you have in those vehicles, equipped for Atmos mixing. And you actually are doing a live Atmos mix on the fly. And out of this mix, you're deriving potentially your 5.1. If somebody down the line cannot do Atmos for whatever reason, for limitation of the platform, they actually can derive the 5.1 out of the Atmos, and in some cases even the stereo. So for the big production, you typically will have a stereo version and an Atmos version. The stereo typically is handed over to either SD or HD services, and the Atmos version is handed over as sole audio to the UHD services distributions.
Right.
Out you can derive your 5.1 or whatever else you may need.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. Actually, it makes me wonder, particularly as we start to bring Atmos to more and more production types, so not just high-end content, whether the production and post-production community is managing to keep up, in your view, with this. Is it creating problems for you as a broadcaster that are further up the chain?
It does. Unfortunately, the nature of the format, it can have up to 128 audio tracks within it. where we would take a file now, and that one file will have the video in stereo 5.1, and we can edit that within any software. And that would need to do that for creating promos or just compliance reasons to censor content. Dolby Atmos, it's a completely separate package, doesn't deliver with the video. As I said, it's got 128 audio tracks. They are encapsulated within one file. They can't go into Premiere and just cut together or Avid. It does need a much more laborious approach. So yeah, it is more challenging. It is more time consuming for a broadcaster, especially broadcasters who do a lot of stuff in-house as we do in Sky.
So yeah, so what is your way of dealing with that, Ashley? I mean, particularly if you're making trailer material or whatever, I mean, do you accept that maybe the trailer material is not going to be in Atmos or something? How do you manage to deal with it?
Exactly. I think every case has been different. Sometimes we've had to just go, we can't do it in Atmos, it's in 5.1. Occasionally we've had to send some work out of house, and other times we've been fortunate enough to have some very, very bright people at Sky who can, let's say, reverse engineer what we're meant to be doing with Atmos and take it to a format which we can edit with, and then insert that back into the Atmos mix. But it's very time consuming. The tool set hasn't matured like it has for stereo 5.1.
So I guess, Ray, I've got to bring you back in here and ask you how you think these tool sets might evolve to make all this a bit simpler.
So I do think someone asked in the chat too about streaming, being able to stream.
Yeah.
Certainly you've seen. I think Andrea mentioned the BT Sport example, right? With sports. I think all of that is going to continue to just drive consumer adoption, right? Because the consumers are really the ones demanding these experiences. And you can see that certainly in even streaming and just the entire, if you think about pre-pandemic, right? The entire digital disruption that was happening, which was really having operational and economic impacts to really any media organization that was producing content. And the effect that had to how they were doing their work, right? It's been nothing short of transformational, right? And I think you're going to see a similar style thing. I think, Mark, in our pre-call, you mentioned that this is audio's HD moment. And I agree with you that I think that the consumer demand, as they start to experience better and better, audio enhancement as they deal with any content, whether it be sports or gaming or anything, they're going to demand these experiences. And so I think that's going to drive technologists to then take these experiences that today are fairly complex and start to drive that in ways that will basically deliver that across pretty much any medium. And then, you look at other technology inflection points, 5G, for example, right? That's certainly going to enable that. You think about, right, certainly virtual reality, right, has been one of those things that's kind of been on the periphery. And part of the reason why virtual reality has been on the periphery is because the delivery part of that has been a challenge, as has the expense of those headsets to enable that experience. And so as those costs have come down over time, and now with 5G becoming more pervasive, that experience is going to get only that much more compelling. And I would say the audio component of that is certainly a big piece in all of those instances. So I think what you're going to see is just basically consumers driving that experience. And I think the technology companies are going to respond by taking the technology today and continue to improve on it and basically enable delivery across anything, really.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm really interested in how when you're mixing in Dolby Atmos, going back to the production, how it changes the storyline, and how it's got the potential to change the storyline as well. And quite often when obviously you're mixing, you're saying that you can mix, mix using, stereo and Dolby and mainly you're mixing in stereo, and then you post produce the Dolby after. How does that work with productions and the ability to change the storyline of a film?
Actually, this is a very interesting question. It was, of course, mixers can say more because they're sitting directly with directors, producers on the side. It's been nice to have the connection between the DOPs and the mixer as well. So DOP, for instance, director of the photography, is involved in the color grading, but not enough involved in the sound mixing. So some of the shoots and the clips, it could be done differently, because they can see the tracking. The camera could go totally different. The movements of the camera can be different. The environment could be different. So the director is giving this mood, but DOP can give the movement. On the beginning of this podcast, this webinar, Mark mentioned about metaverse. Metaverse, it's a metadata for whole environment, 3D environment in the future for the 3D production, for the whole environment with the camera tracking and the room tracking and motion caption tracking. In the future, the data, for example, there is a new software, and it's old software like sand particles, which you can import the camera tracking and metaverse metadata, which helping for you the mixing, what the DOP has seeing, or how you move the tracking of the camera, which help you and make a panning, swipes, etc., etc. But Jonathan and Chris can actually say more how they feel about it, because it's a very creative process. The mix is giving you the whole environment, and it can totally change the story.
Well, like I was saying, Nick, yes, definitely, Thomas. I mean, like I was saying earlier, in this particular production that I was telling you about, there was between I was the sound supervisor and the DOP. We had really good chats about how we could tackle different scenes that they were not thinking in that way, because they were not thinking about sound. So then our job really still, although it is a lot easier in a way for people to understand sound and for everyone, from consumers and creatives alike, it is still our job to make sure that we are there, and then we make our life a little bit easier to make sure that we can implement all this creativity in the mix and in the track lay. So then if the track lay is there, then the mix can be done in that way from that point, from that beginning of the production. So in pre-production, you really have to talk about these things and how our tools now are enabling us to be a lot more of an active part of the story, rather than just being this passive, okay, we have, a surround sound, whatever it is, so you have to deliver sound, obviously. And instead of being that passive element, now we can be a much more active one, that we can really participate within that storyline at different points, at different levels, and a much more granular level as well as a macro level, and bring that story to life in ways that perhaps even the director haven't even considered. So it is our job really to be there to say, look, you can do this, this way, this scene this way, or this other way, or the way that you were thinking. So then we can offer more possibilities to deliver the same storyline.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Recently, we were working a lot on the pre-production, on the virtual production as well. The production is shifting to the pre-production, even to create the previews to see the film before it's actually created. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jonathan, I didn't want to.
No, yeah. I mean, exactly. And I think also once you get into the mixing of complex audio, where you've got a lot of things that you're trying to hear, you've got a lot of sound effects, you've got people talking, presumably you want to hear what they're saying, and a lot of music. One of the things that working in a format like Dolby Atmos gives you is it gives you more of an ability to separate the different elements of the mix so that you can maintain that level of clarity and audibility. As a mixer, that's definitely something that really helps, because directors have a nasty tendency to want everything, and because they sort of know the script, sometimes they forget that maybe you can't understand every line of dialogue right now. And at least with more possibilities of where we can place, for instance, music a little bit further away from where people are talking, or where important sound effects are happening, that gives us a greater ability to also have more clarity to the storytelling if it's done right. And it isn't always done right.
What? And we go back then now to the beginning. So this is the way that we actually listen, isn't it? The way that we perceive sound as human beings. You don't mix, the music in the room with the people that is chatting with you. So then this is really allowing us again to create all these soundscapes that are not only more immersive, but also they resemble reality. And, like Jonathan was saying, that ability to separate, it is priceless to us, because then you have so much more scope.
Yeah.
On the same level.
Can I bring Tina back for a second? Because this when at Dolby hear conversations like this, it must feel rather extraordinary, because it's almost like I think you referred to it earlier on, to sort of trying to produce sound as it's meant to be heard. It's like almost like R&D conditions for sound creation have suddenly actually become part of the everyday production process, and it's as if our production capability and the technology with it has caught up with what used to be an R&D level of sound reproduction.
Yeah, and I think that's ideal too, because really what you want to be as a creator is creating. You don't want the technology to be driving what you're doing. And I think that's a huge goal. And I was kind of itching to say also, when people started talking about DOPs getting involved with sound design, one of the reasons that I've been super excited about podcasting of all things is because we are seeing sound designers and writers working together. And they're actually working to really reimagine the story in a new creative audio version, which I think at some point, since we've got so many podcasters creating for television as well, we'll start to see that influence moving upstream, so to speak. So it's a pretty exciting time where creatives are actually allowed to create instead of worrying about technology dictating what they can do.
Yeah, but as you suggest, also a very exciting time when you've got all these different crossovers, which I'm sure creates lots of complexity at times and lots of confusion, but also, and completely, but also a lot of excitement, a lot of creativity.
Yeah, I think the great thing is we have a lot of knowledge from cinema down to television, and now as we get into gaming, and we have these resources that we can tap and learn from, which makes a huge difference. There are slight differences, and as Jonathan was saying earlier, it's really interesting to see people step outside of the big stages in order to create on headphones, and then come out of an experience where their headphone mix has been in a car and they say things like, it sounded like I intended. And so it's super exciting that there's a lot of flexibility happening. And yes, I see questions coming up that are like, how do I do this? And there's so much training, and I know you guys offer training as far as like what is available out there. So there are resources for sure, but it's a world.
And thank you for that. It's a good segue. Let's address a couple of the specific questions here, which are more specific and more technical. And you'll know amongst you which ones should pick them up. So Arif Chagla was asking, apart from the Dolby Atmos production system, is there a plugin that can encode a stereo file to binaural that you can suggest? Jonathan?
There are quite a lot actually of other third-party plugins that will take different multi-channel. You can't encode a stereo track into binaural because stereo only has 2 channels, so there's nothing really there to encode. It's like as good as you're going to get. But you could take a 5.1 track and make it binaural, or a 7.1, or anything else. And there's quite a few. You can Google it. There are several plugins that are quite good at doing that.
Okay, great. Now, look, this next question I'm going to read out because I can tell you I don't understand it, but I'm sure one of you is going to, which comes from Antonis Tsukatos, who asks, are we going to see PPEG-H becoming a standard for immersive audio in broadcasting? Andrea.
Personalize our relation transfer functions. So yeah, basically this is about the tricks that Jonathan was referring to earlier to deliver binauralized audio, basically to trick the brain when you put your headphones on. That actually you don't have headphones on, but you're actually surrounded by a space, and you're actually getting a natural rendition of that space around you. And this trick depends on your physical coordinates, right? The distance between the ears, the shape of the ears, and a lot of other things. And these are called head-related transfer functions. And the P in front of it stands for personalized. So there's a lot of research at the moment to be able to customize this so that on an individual basis, so that in an ideal world, and that's the holy grail at the end of this process, eventually is going to be to deliver to everybody something that can then map to their own personalized parameters, so that you actually really get the most out of that binauralized experience.
So
yes,
Andrea, because of a typo that Antonis is just...
That was not a question then.
That was not the question. But what I'm going to do is, now that Antonis has told me about his typo, I'm going to come back to his question in a second, because what you're saying is also very, very interesting. This ability to have truly personalized audio, which is beginning to happen around music. And I know that both Dolby and Sony have got innovations in this space. And I'm really keen to know whether this also could be very significant for audio professionals, for mixers and re-recording craftspeople in actually now beginning to work with headphones.
So I was just playing with a piece of software just last week that's in early development, where you actually use your iPhone to take a picture of your ear, and it actually measures your particular ear and then customizes the algorithm for binaural to you. And I think, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that type of stuff, because it makes the trickery, if you like, more perfect. Because once the shape of your head is understood, what makes sound from behind you sound like it's coming from behind you partly is because your ear is slightly focused towards hearing things forward. So it literally sounds different, bounces off the back of your ear differently, in a simplistic way. So understanding the shape of your head helps. I think all of that stuff is coming. I think it's not going to be very long before it'll be added to some of the offerings by pretty much everybody.
But does that mean, though, Jonathan, that if you were to actually mix with a pair of personalized headphones on, mix through them, the world will get to hear a Jonathan Wales head mix? But
no, it's the opposite, right? It's that Jonathan Wales will hear a better fake of the world while he's mixing. Is what it is. And it's not that the headphones are special. It's that the algorithm in the computer is being tweaked based on having better information of what my ears look like.
Right.
And therefore, if I do it for my ears and you do it for your ears, the theory would be that what we would each hear would be more similar to us, because our ears would be being eliminated as a differentiator between us.
Got it. Very well explained. Now, let's go back to Antonis's question. He meant to be asking about MPEG-H. If people know what MPEG-H is anybody in our group going to nod?
It's another technology to deliver immersive and next generation audio experiences, personalized experiences to a final consumer. So competition is good, and it's another mean to deliver. Yeah.
Right. He's asking whether that could become a standard.
Well, I'm sure that there are standard organizations that are working on things like that. I obviously don't work for the organization, so I cannot give you the latest and greatest on their status. But it is certainly another way of delivering immersive audio to a final user.
There are quite a number of standards that have MPEG in front of them, so it's not a huge leap.
That's certainly true. Now, there's a question here for you, Ray. Will Avid be bringing out a version of Pro Tools that can run Dolby natively now the new M1 processors are coming out from Apple, similar to what Logic Pro has done?
So I would say that, today Pro Tools and Ultimate are compatible with Big Sur with 2021.6 and later. And I would encourage you to just go to the knowledge base to basically continue to monitor progress. But yes, we're always working on compatibility and certainly updating really all the software to run the latest and greatest. So
let me give a quick plug for the ACA, which is the sponsoring organization for this event, and say that, those of us who work with Pro Tools on a daily basis through that organization are able to directly, communicate and tell Avid this is what we really want and this is what we really need. So obviously our voices are allowed in some of these areas.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think Avid certainly relies on the ACA for feedback, and certainly a lot of the features that you see across the board in all Avid products come as direct feedback from the ACA. So that we take that very seriously, of course, and it's fantastic actually to have that as a forum, right, and that many customers be able to provide that level of feedback, be very candid, which is great.
Lokiel Kushni is asking, has anyone employed Vienna Symphonic Library's MIR 3D, where 40 plus sound sources can be visually moved around a concert hall or cathedral? And whether or not people have used that, it does logically lead into a question actually about sound libraries and does the move towards Atmos make sound libraries now kind of redundant and useless, historic ones? Can you repurpose them? And indeed, are people now creating special new sound libraries that are particularly designed for immersive audio? Jonathan?
Nothing is ever obsolete. If you record the natural world, we're constantly using recordings that were made 50 years ago, and we're constantly using recordings that were made last week. When we're putting content together, it's a case of like baking a cake, right? A little bit of this, a little bit of that, little flavor, a little, and then you mix it all up together to make something that hopefully is delightful for the person consuming it. So no, I think there are also a lot of immersive sound recordings where previously they may have been released in 5.1, but they were actually captured in other formats, either tetrahedral or mid-side or various other things that can be re-released now, as we go forwards in even more interesting formats. So I think there's a lot of material out there that people have been capturing for a long time that there hasn't been a good way for them to get it out. So no, I don't think that that's a problem in terms of invalidating existing sources.
And actually, to expand on that, I wonder whether there's an opportunity also for music in the sync domain, because so far music, even for an Atmos sound score for a movie, typically the music stem is still delivered not as an Atmos, it's delivered as a stereo or as a 5.1. But over time, having an increasing library of music in Atmos will provide an opportunity and more flexibility, also from a synchronization, episodic or movie, or gaming for that matter, or other applications.
Yeah, and for movies, we're taking a lot of stems that either may be stereo, 5.1, and then positioning them within the Atmos space. So different parts of the orchestra we can still move around. I saw someone saying about using MIR 3D from Vienna. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the I was just having dinner last night with Simon Franklin, and I know for a fact that he's doing that stuff, where you can literally position instruments in the orchestra in 3D space. There are some very, very interesting reverbs out there now where we can truly simulate real environments to a much greater level of accuracy. This is great, right? We're creative people playing in a playground that is just got so much more exponentially big, with so many more toys, and I think that's the kind of thing that stimulates people to make interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's something actually I always found myself thinking a bit earlier. I mean, Thomas, maybe I could ask you about this. But does it feel as if what this is doing is actually sort of making the dubbing theatre is becoming the kind of fulcrum now for a production, rather than just that thing that happens at the end?
I mean, it's a very complex, it's simple question, but it's a very complex question as well. I mean, because the mixing stage is different, but also a sound stages is different. I mean, on the process, how you record the files. We got in here the Foley department. And for instance, each sounds for the film is 80% of sounds in the film is actually done by Foley if it's a high level production with a big budget, because the artist can give all these impressions. So the way how it's recorded is fit to the film. So if you want to do the library of the sounds, it's not the same. So for instance, because the movements and everything is not the same. So sometimes what is happening for the gaming is a little different. It's as close as microphone you have to record the sound and very plain sounds, and keep this as a library files, which you can reuse for the software. And the software is put the sounds on do the reverb, or change this room size, or a dimension of the sound. So sorry, the where the sound is oriented in the room. So that's one is actually amazing how you record the sounds. It's the same with the vocal, because when the film and the mix is done, so in theory you creative breaking a sound for purpose of this film. So if you have a plain recording, you can expand as you want, because it's the most high quality sound. And the library, it's the stamps of the state on the mix, and to lock to picture.
I have to plug the mixing process though, because I have to say it's not just that thing that happens at the end, because when we get in a mixing stage with a director and a producer and stuff, it is the first time they've seen their movie come together as well. It's the first time for them putting everything together. And so, you know, a lot of that creative process does happen at that point. Music gets, you know, changed or thrown out, or, you know, or you could reconceive a scene entirely differently by just listening to it without music, or totally changing the approach. Maybe it's going to be much quieter than you originally thought. And that is all the things that we do together. And it's what we do together, even if we're working remotely. And I've got people sitting the other end of Evercast listening binaurally. We're still collaborating and doing the same process.
But that really reminds me, though, Jonathan, of the conversations about virtual production. And it's like the amount of pre-planning that now has to be done, because actually it kind of all comes together in a moment. I mean, there people are talking particularly obviously about the picture, but it's almost like it becomes almost like making something live, because you know, you have to have everything there at that moment, or it gets very, very expensive. And I guess it just invite a lot more pre-planning, and you know, again, when it comes to the kind of tools that you require, how easy is it for you know, for a director, for instance, to be able to kind of do a sketch, if you like, of what they're going to end up having at the end?
We do this in temp mixes all the time.
Really?
And yeah, we do temp mix for a couple of days or a week or whatever. And, you know, thanks to the fact that we're working in the box these days, all that information in Pro Tools can be reconformed, it can be reused. And often you're building the final product, you know, over the course of the process. So there may be things in the final mix that might have been the thing we did on day one of the first temp.
Now, Ashley, your colleague Darren Long has been asking in the chat about whether we have the skilled audio technicians who can actually mix properly in Atmos. And that's an interesting question, actually, because obviously we've got some people here who are highly skilled. But are you finding that you're actually struggling now to find the craft talent who can make the best of this capability?
Yeah, I don't think the issue is unique to Atmos. I think there's different approaches to creating an audio mix. And I think it's very much a creative decision, but unfortunately there are viewers who will disagree and will struggle to hear dialogue, where someone wants to, a sound mixer might want to create something that's very immersive, very cinematic. You take that to the home environment and it's not necessarily appropriate, and people will end up riding the levels, turning the volume up and down to reduce the sounds of explosion and to hear the dialogue when it comes in.
And Nick, I think actually it's a good time to bring you back in, because I know you're really interested by this kind of distinction between being able to control, for the consumer to better control the mix for accessibility reasons versus them kind of messing up creative intent.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. I think it's mind-blowing listening to you talk, actually, all of you, about the creative possibilities of Dolby Atmos and immersive sound, and it's made me think a lot about how in the future very much how possibly how audio could be led. Films could be audio led very much so. The more that the consumer has the ability to listen to it, and at the moment that's the problem, isn't it? I guess that there's you've got some people who have got Dolby Atmos, you've got some people who have just got stereo, and a very, very mixed, different state of what people are listening on. And yeah, so how do you deal with that? That's
one of the things we've not discussed is with next generation audio, they do allow, not just yet, but the consumer to have a bit more control over the balance of that mix. Now it's subject to the creatives allowing that, but with certain content, if the creative allows it in the future, they will be able to adjust the dialogue in a way that the creative has signed off on, in a way that they are happy with. And not just dialogue, but also the music and effects, they will be captured differently. And as you say, for accessibility, someone elderly struggling to hear dialogue, no matter how precious the sound mixer might want that immersive feeling, they're going to need to hear the dialogue. So there will be some content where the mixers will allow this customizability for the viewer. And it's placing those objects and allowing it separate from the rest of the mix.
Yeah, and let's be clear, the sign-offs here are coming from the director and the producer, not from the sound mixer. So the people who have the determination there is them. But also there's one other elephant in the room on that stuff, which is a lot of televisions, especially if they're not dealing with Atmos, are trying to do a lot of fake spatial type stuff. And those fake spatial algorithms have a nasty tendency to destroy the dialogue within the mix. And that's one thing that I've seen is a really big contributor to people saying they can't hear the dialogue. And then you go in the TV and turn off all the fake spatial. It's like, oh, now I can hear it. So there is some manufacturer relationship issues. Just like manufacturers tend to set TVs with a lot of interpolation on picture, that'll take a $200 million movie and make it look like it was shot on a handheld video.
Tina, did you want to come in on this question?
Well, I actually wanted to make a comment about the training, and then we kind of veered off. So really quickly, there were some people saying that, how do you learn and the short, or people not being trained well enough. Just two things, Dolby.com, there's tons of resources, but also Avid has in their training, they have a Dolby Atmos section. So from the technical side, there is training out there. And some of these tools are actually relatively new. So it's a good thing to check out.
Yeah, I was going to put the link in the chat to where you can go to basically learn about the certification for Dolby Atmos. So I'll do that now.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
A quick comment. I wanted actually to chime in on the personalization and accessibility. As Ashley mentioned, this is kind of something that a lot of organizations are thinking for the future. In particular, think about public broadcast with certain obligations in relation to delivering services with accessibility features. There was a test that was done, a service actually that was done, that was carried out in Poland by the Polish TV with AC4, which is a next generation audio codec example that we have, which enables you not only to deliver immersive audio, but also personalized and accessibility services bolted on top, using object-based audio, using these other attributes of audio and so on and so forth, where you could actually have audio description services, for example. In that particular case, I think we had two different commentaries that you could choose, or you could actually have a radio commentary, which essentially was a descriptive track if you wanted to, from an editorial or personal choice point of view, or if you had to because of personal need. So I think we will see more of that in the future, and it's certainly something that a lot of people are currently working on. And that doesn't necessarily mean just for immersive audio services. It could be a stereo program, or it could be a 5.1 program, which may have some extra features which facilitate the accessibility side of things or the personalization sort of thing. In some cases, this may be desirable for certain content, back to sports, because you want to deliver different flavors. Like if you think about motorsports, you may already want to deliver the choice to the user to add different camera angles, to be the in-car, or to listen to the radio communications to the team.
Right.
So you may want to actually deliver as a feature, or enable as a feature, the opportunity for users to choose the kind of mix and what kind of elements in the mix, what kind of objects they actually want to have drop in their own personalized version of a mix based on certain characteristic
yeah, that's a kind of slightly scary thought. Now, look, we've only got a few minutes left, and one or two people are actually asking the inevitable final question, which is about where you think this technology is going next. So any predictions for the next few years, either in terms of what you think could happen in the consumer realm, or the broadcaster use of it, or specifically around immersive technology. So I'm going to quickly go around you all. We've only got 4 minutes, so give us your off the cuff, immediate sense of what you think might come next. Now, Ashley, you made the mistake of being off mute, so I'm going to ask you first.
I found it quite interesting how much we've talked about binaural, and we all know how common mobile is getting to consume content. As amazing as Dolby Atmos is, it is creating a 3D environment from ears above, but so much audio comes from below the ears, whether it be children, tires, raindrops, and also you just get refraction of surfaces. You've generally always got a ground beneath you. So I think maybe in the future, something that encapsulates audio from below as well. I know the focus is consumer environments where you're unlikely to get those speakers below you, but when you've got your binaural, there's no issue like that.
Yeah, very, very good. So I've got to ask Tina, we're going to get sort of pavement audio next.
I think that's super cool, by the way, Ashley. I'm like, oh, that's such a great idea. Unfortunately, the product team doesn't always tell me everything because I'll talk about it. So I don't know for sure on that. But I would think that you would also start seeing, more types of experiences that are happening in immersive, theatrical, as far as like musical type style or live events. And I am definitely looking forward to car experiences, even though that's kind of really close future, but that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's great when people start buying their cars based upon the sound they make inside, not the sound they make from the exhaust pipe.
Right, exactly.
So Jonathan, what about you?
Yeah, well, we're getting rid of exhaust pipes, right? So we gotta have even better listening environments. I think I go back to my original thing of that it's so encouraging to see quality of experience now being the driver for for subscription adoption in people like Netflix and stuff like that. I think what Apple's done with spatial audio just starts to show how much you can bring to a consumer when you have a tight integration between the device and what's going on. And I just think that this is everything we're dealing with right now is sort of generation one of getting this stuff to consumers. And we know that Gen 1 is like just the experimental sort of barely out of beta testing version. So obviously it's just going to explode. And I want to go to a concert in Atmos. Are you kidding? How cool would that be? Concerts, clubs, sport, I mean, you name it. The world itself is by definition immersive. So we want our offline experiences to match our online experience.
Yeah, they're going to get merged together. Yeah. Now look, we're almost out of time. So very quickly, the last four of you. So Chris.
I just hope in 5 years' time, then we laugh that we were having a discussion about immersive audio, because it will be the norm. So there is not going to be audio and immersive audio, it's just audio. So that's what I hope for in
Very
5
good.
years'
We'll
time.
get rid of it, just like we get rid of the word digital finally.
Yeah,
Andrea.
exactly.
I hope the screen doesn't get too small, but I hope that the audio gets much bigger and certainly more personalized and more immersive across different application areas.
Very good. Thomas?
More creative noise. So definitely metaverse audio.
Yeah.
More R&D on this direction.
And Ray?
Basically the interaction of other smart devices in your living room that get triggered from the audio tracks that you're listening to that will further enhance the experience. I think that's something that's
And you
coming.
don't,
I also
you
think
don't- you don't mean
monetization.
on the vacuum cleaner, do you? You don't want that to suddenly spring into life.
Yeah, exactly. I also think there's monetization possibilities too in the future off of audio. That will be interesting.
Well, Nick, yeah, just give us your final reflection before we go.
Yeah, well, I think it's absolutely quite right that audio, you know, gets to be expected, that it's high end and you know, incredibly high quality. I'm really excited about the future of all listening experiences actually being immersive. I mean, I think it's an incredibly exciting prospect. It really is. I think you know, it just opens up so much in the world of content.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all listening experiences. That's a good phrase, I think. Well, look, I can tell you that as I head off to the Consumer Electronics Show in person in what is now only about 3 weeks' time, I'm already predicting that one of the trends I'm going to be writing about is going to be about how important audio is in that show. I just got a feeling it's going to be center stage this year. Thank you all so much. It's been fantastic to talk to you. I really appreciate you all giving the time and the insight. It's been great to have you here. So thank you to Jonathan, to Ashley, to Andrea, to Chris, to Thomas, to Ray, to Tina, and of course from Nick and me. Just a note that we have another session that we're going to be doing with the Avid Community Association, and that's actually going to be about video again. We're going to be asking whether we're facing the next non-linear revolution. This is all about with pre-visualization, easy for me to say, and also what's happening with collaborative workflows and whether it's really fundamentally changing what it means to edit pictures nowadays. So that'll be happening in March. Date's got to be fixed. It's going to be early March of next year. We very much look forward to having you all back with us for that. But for now, thanks for joining us. Have a great day or evening or night, depending on where you are. Bye for now.